Welcome to online study on Transfer of Property Act. Let us discuss the provisions of Section 114. What Section 114 provides? That relief against forfeiture for non-payment of rent. When a lease is forfeited, that is, as per Section 111G, in three circumstances, a lease can be forfeited. What are those circumstances? Suppose there is a condition in the lease by forfeiture. In a case, the lessee breaks an express condition which provides that on breach thereof the lessor may re-enter. So there must be an express condition in the lease that if the lessee breaks that condition, then the lessor can re-enter into the lease property. In such case, there will be a forfeiture. Second is, in case lessee renounces his character as such, how? By setting up a title in the lease property. Suppose the lessee himself claims that he has a title. Title by or setting a third person or by claiming title in himself. Either he is saying that third person has a title or he has a title. Then the lease can be forfeited. Third is when there is a condition. The lessee is adjudicated insolvent and the lease provides that the lessor may re-enter on the happening of such event. That is, on the happening of that insolvency, the lessor can re-enter. So in any of these three cases, the lease can be forfeited. Suppose, so there may be a condition in the lease that due to non-payment of rent, the lessor can re-enter into this lease property as per clause G. So in such case, there will be a forfeiture. So if there is a condition in the lease that due to non-payment of rent by the lessee, the lease is to be forfeited and the lessor can re-enter into the lease property. So that is a condition, that is one ground for forfeiture. So for non-payment of rent, when a forfeiture has taken place or a suit has been filed for ejectment on the ground of forfeiture due to non-payment of rent, then if in the court, after the institution of the suit, the lessee deposits the arrear rent and also agrees to pay the rent, then such forfeiture may be waived. This is the provision in section 114. What it says? Where a lease of immovable property has been determined by forfeiture of non-payment of rent. Lease is determined. Forfeiture, due to forfeiture, lease comes to an end. When a lease of immovable property is determined by forfeiture due to non-payment of rent and the lessor sues to eject the lessee, two conditions are there. The lease is forfeited due to non-payment of rent and lease determined. Lease determines due to forfeiture. Lease is determined, the word proper wording must be the lease is determined. Lease determined due to forfeiture for non-payment of rent and the lessor sues the lessee in the court for the arrear rent, for the rent. In such case, at the hearing of the suit, when the suit is taken up for hearing, the lessee pays or tenders to the lessor the rent in arrear. Then the lessee deposits the arrear rent in court or pays the arrear rent in court or tenders the arrear rent to the lessor at the time of hearing. Not only the arrear rent together with interest thereon and its full cost of the suit, including the cost of the suit. The cost, because he did not pay the rent, so that's why the lessor brought a suit for claiming for relation of the arrear rent. So if at the time of hearing of the suit, the lessee pays or tenders the arrear rent to the lessor together with cost of the suit, then and also interest and cost of the suit, or give such security as the court thinks sufficient for making such payment within 15 days. Suppose immediately the lessee is not paying the area rent with interest and cost of the suit, but give security to the satisfaction of the that within 15 days you will pay the area rent with interest and cost of the suit. In such case, as the court thinks sufficient for making such payment within 15 days, the court may, in lieu of making a decree for ejectment, because the suit has been filed to eject the lessee from the leased property due to non-payment of rent and forfeiture. So if the lessee deposits the rent in court or pays the area rent with interest and also cost of the suit, or gives security for payment of the area rent and the cost of the suit within 15 days in court, the court may, instead of passing a decree for ejectment, for eviction of the lessee from the leased property, may pass an order relieving the lessee against the forfeiture. Thereby, the court will pass an order relieving the lessee for forfeiture, from eviction, and thereupon the lessee shall hold the property lease as if the forfeiture had not occurred. That means the entire purpose here in section 114 is that lease is forfeited due to non-payment of rent. If some rent has not been paid and the lessor has brought a suit forfeiting, determining the lease by way of forfeiture, then at the hearing of the suit, if the lessee pays the area rent with interest and cost of the suit, or gives security before the court that he will pay the area rent with cost of the suit and with interest within 15 days, then the court, instead of passing a decree for ejectment or for eviction of the lessee from the leased property, may direct that the lease should continue. The lessee, the forfeiture had not, as if the forfeiture had not occurred. This is section 114. Now section 114 is a relief against forfeiture in certain other cases, where a lease of a movable property has been determined by forfeiture for a breach of an express condition, which provides that on breach thereof the lessor may re-enter. You are aware, as per section 111G, forfeiture, lease is determined by forfeiture. Wow, that if there is a express condition in the lease, that due to break of that condition, due to breach of that condition, the lessor can re-enter into the lease property. So in such case, that lease is determined by way of forfeiture. Here section 114A, it has been included by way of amendment, that where a lease of immovable property has been determined by forfeiture for a breach of an express condition which provides that due to breach of that condition, the lessor can re-enter into the lease property on the lessee. Then in such case, no suit for ejectment shall lie unless and until the lessor has served on the lessee a notice in writing. So before bringing a suit for ejectment, for eviction, on the ground of forfeiture of a lease for the region, or on the ground that forfeiture of the lease for breach of a condition of the lease by a lessor, and there is a condition for re-entry. That is called re-entry, right of re-entry of the lessor into the lease property due to failure of non-payment of rent. In such case, before filing a suit for ejectment of the lessee by the lessor must give a notice. Must give a notice to the lessee, specifying the particular breach complained of. What type of breach, what condition of the lease, which condition of the lease the lessee breached, and if the breach is capable of remedy. Suppose the breach is such a breach that can be rectified, that can be remedy can be there, remedied. If the breach capable of remedy, then in that case, the lessor will requiring the lessee to remedy the breach, and the lessee fails. If the lessee fails to remedy, to rectify, or to that means amend or to remedy the breach, in such case within a reasonable time from the date of the service of the notice to remedy the breach, if it is capable of remedy. So if it is within a reasonable time, this breach was not that was remedy. Remedy means what? That is that no longer that breach is there. If, suppose there is a has let out a house. X has let out a house to Y with a condition that if you will sublease it, then you can be enter. So in such case, suppose that a notice is given, you have subleased, or and also asking if in the meantime you vacate the subtenant and you remain. If he complies this, the remedy is there. Remedy that with the breach of condition is thereby is not no more in breach of condition. That is removed. Condition is default which has been made by the lessee by breaking the condition of a lease. If it does any act, thereby the original condition is restored. Then in such case, then suit cannot be brought. So that's why a notice is required. What it provides? That or before bringing a suit or rejectment on the ground of forfeiture or breach of a condition of a lease, the lessor must give notice to the lessee that you informing, specifying the what condition of the lease is breached, and also require to rectify it, to rectify the breach. If he fails to do so, then only a suit will lie. But this nothing in this section shall apply to an express condition against the assignee. If there is the express condition that if the assignee, lessor has assigned the lease property on under letting, parting with the possession or disposing of the property leads to an express condition related to forfeiture in case of non-payment. If there is an express condition in the lease, no notice is required for instituting a suit. When he subleases, the assigns the lessee assigns or parting with his possession or disposing the property lease or to an express condition related to forfeiture in case of non-payment. If such a condition is there, in those three cases, four cases, if there is express condition in the lease is that notice need not be given before filing of a suit for ejectment. In such case, such a notice is not required. That is which is under lease. Under lease means what? First lease is there. X is the lessor. In a lease there is a lessor, and the person who transferred a right for enjoyment to the another, that is called the lessor. To whom the right of enjoyment is given is called lessee. So the lessee can sublease. Sublease. When a sublease takes place, then the subsidiary third person who is a sublessee, that is called the under lessee. So effect of surrender and forfeiture on under lessee. Suppose the original lease is surrender. Surrender takes place with the consent of both the lessor and the lessee. So there is a sublessee, that is under lessee. Suppose a forfeiture takes place. Suppose the suit for ejectment is brought and forfeiture because of forfeiture the suit lease is determined. Then what will be the fate of the under lessee? That is called under lessee. So under leases. So in this case, this section 115 provides the surrender, express or implied, of a lease of immovable property does not prejudice an under lease of the property. So if a question is put, when a lease is surrendered or lease is determined by forfeiture, thereby the rights of the under lessee is not affected. It will not, such a surrender, such a forfeiture will not take place, will not be made so as to cause prejudice to the under lease, or any party thereof previously granted by the lessee. The original lessee has given subleased that property. So because of surrender of the lease or because of forfeiture, because of determination of delay by forfeiture, the sublease will not be prejudiced. On terms and conditions substantially the same except as regard the amount of rent. In such case, the terms and conditions of the first lessee and the sublease will remain except the terms are those of the original lease. Original lease terms and condition was like that. That those terms and conditions, sublease, the underlease will hold the property. But unless the surrender is made for the purpose of obtaining a new lease, suppose a surrender has been made by the original lessee for obtaining a new lease, in such case, this right and liability of the terms and condition of the original will not subside. The rent payable by and the contracts binding on the under lease shall be respectively payable to the enforceable by the lessor. So once the surrender takes place or a lease is determined, then the under lessee will be treated as a lessee under the original lessor. So here the section 115 provides that will not affect the right of the under lessee, except when there is a surrender by the original lessee for obtaining a new lease. The forfeiture of such lease annuls all such under leases, except where such forfeiture has been procured by the lessor in fraud of the under leases. The forfeiture of such lease annuls all such under leases, except suppose when there is a forfeiture, then the forfeiture of such a lease annuls all such under leases. Under leases are annuls, except where such forfeiture has been procured by the lessor in fraud of the under lease. Under lessee forfeiture, the original lessor and the under lessee, they exercise a fraud and thereby they obtain a forfeiture. In such case, the under lessee will not be relieved. So the forfeiture of such a lease annuls all such under lessees, except where such forfeiture has been procured by the lessor in fraud of the under lessee, or relief against the forfeiture is granted under section 100. Under section 114, there is relief against forfeiture for non-payment of, in such case, rent is paid. In such case, they will not be affected. That means when the suit has been filed for forfeiture for non-payment, or if there is a under lease and the money is paid, the rent is paid, the under lease is granted. So this is section 150. Now section 160. What is? If you get a question, who is a tenant by holding over? Tenant by holding over, tenant at sufferance. Sometimes you get a question. You should know who is a tenant by holding over. Tenant by holding over means the lease period is over. Thereafter, the tenant continues by paying rent then to the lessor. Then in such case, then he will be tenant as holding over. When a person, lease period is over, but the tenant is remaining in possession and the landlord is not receiving the rent, then that person will be treated as tenant at sufferance. Here, tenant holding over. What is that? If a lessee or under lessee of property remains in possession thereof after the determination of the lease granted to the lessee. So lease is determined. How a lease is determined? There is section 111 by a flux of time, then by forfeiture, by happening of an event. Also circumstances are there. These circumstances we find. So effect of holding. What it says? If a lessee or under lessee remains in possession of the lease property, lessee remains, or the under lessee is remains in possession of the lease property after the determination of the lease, that is after determination granted to the lessee. So that is lease comes to an end. Thereafter the lessee or the under lessee remains in possession and the lessor or the legal representative accepts rent from the lessee or under lessee. After determination of the lease, the lessee or the under lessee remains in possession and is again paying the rent and the lessor accepts or his representative accepts, or otherwise access to his continuing his, or the lessor or his legal representatives otherwise assent for continuing the possession of this lease property by the lessee or under lessee. The lease is in absence of agreement to the contrary renewed from year to year or from month to month according to the purpose for which the property is leased. In such case, the lease is deemed renewal takes place. The lease is renewed from month to month in case of monthly lease or from year to year in case of annual lease as specified in section 116. 116 is very important. What is this? Effect of holding over. It is not tenant or holding over, it is not mentioned. Effect of holding over. Because lease is determined. Lease comes to an end. But thereafter, the lessee or the under lessee remains in possession and the lessor or his representatives consents for continuance of the lease. Then in such case, that lease will be treated as a lease holding over and the tenant will be treated as tenant holding. Then in such case, the lease is deemed to be renewed from year to year if it is an annual lease or from month to month if it is a monthly lease. It is a very simple section. What is effect of holding over? When there is a holding over, because lease comes to an end, lease is determined. Then the lessee will be evicted. The lessee will surrender the lease property to the lessor. But lessee doesn't surrender, remains in possession. Or under lessee remains in possession. Goes on paying rent. And the lessor accepts the rent. Or his representative, legal representative accept the rent. Or they also assent for the continuation of the possession and also accepting rent. Then in such case, what will be the effect? The effect will be of the lease will be by lease holding over. In such case, if it is an annual lease, that will be deemed to be renewed from year to year. If it is a monthly rate, that is to be deemed to be renewed from month to month. Illustration will make you clear what he says. A lets a house to B for 5 years. A has leased out his house to B for 5 years. B undertakes the house on the under lease the house to C. A had leased the house to B for 5 years. Thereafter, B under leased that house to C at a monthly rent of 100. The 5 years expires. The period of 5 years expires. But C continues in possession of the house and pays the rent to A. After the expiry of the period of lease, that is 5 years, C, the under lease lessee, is still continuing in possession and he pays rent of 100 instead of B to C. So in such case, that is a lease holding over. So in C, lease is renewed from month to month. The second illustration will make you clear. A lets a farm to B for the life of C. A leases a farm to B for life of, during the lifetime of C. B will remain in as a tenant of that particular farm under B. C dies. So once C dies, the lease is determined. On the happening of an event, the lease is determined in such case, but B continues in possession with his asset. B did not surrender the lease, B did not vacate the possession, B still continued in possession of that farm and pays rent to A. And A assents it. B's lease is renewed from year to year. This is section 160. What is the effect of holding? It is the title of this section is effect of holding. When there is a lease by holding over, that means lease is determined. After determination of the lease, the lessee or the under lessee remains in possession of the lease property and pays rent to the lessor, and he accepts, or the lessor's legal representative accepts the rent, or they otherwise assent for continuation of that lessee as tenant of the lease property. Then in such case, that lease is deemed to be renewed, deemed renewal takes place according to section 106. 106 means in absence of a specific term, specific period in the lease. If it is a manufacturing purpose, then the lease will be from year to year. Other than manufacturing purpose or agricultural purpose, the lease will be lease is for monthly lease. So in such case, that will be renewed. This is section 116. Now, let us discuss the provisions of section 117. Exemption of leases from agriculture purpose. You know, most of the leases are there for agriculture purpose. In rural India, most of the agricultural land, many persons, they give lease of their agricultural land to tenants. Here, either on share of crop or on payment of money, either sonja or a particular somewhere it is called pagdi. This is Odia in different part of Odisha, different custom, different local custom is there. So sometimes 1/4 share or half share of the crop. This lease are called agricultural. Whether the provisions of lease as provided in Transfer of Property Act are applicable to agricultural lease? The answer is no. Do the provisions contained in lease in the Transfer of Property Act will be applicable in agricultural lease if there is a notification by the government to that effect. If a notification takes place after 6 months publication of that notification for 6 months, then it will be applicable subject to other local laws if any enforced. In Odisha, we have Odisha Land Defence Act. In the Odisha Land Defence Act, Odisha Tenancy Act, their agricultural lease is covered. Agricultural lease is, there is a, how much rent is to be paid, that is there in the Odisha agriculture, Odisha Land Defence Act. So section 117 says, exemption of leases for agriculture purpose. None of the provisions of this chapter apply to leases for agricultural purposes except in so far as the state government may by notification published in the official gazette declare, when the state government declares in the official gazette that all or any of such provision to be so applicable, then in that it will be applicable. In the case of all or any of such leases, together with or subject to those of the local law, if any for the time being. That means the provisions of lease as provided in Transfer of Property Act will not be applicable to the agricultural lease unless there is a notification, special notification of the state government providing that if a particular these provisions are applicable. Then such that including local law, the local laws, if any, for the time in force, such notifications shall not take place, shall not take effect until the expiration of 6 months from the date of its publication. If a notification is made by the state government that the provisions or some of the sections of this chapter will be applicable to agricultural lease, then such a notification will not take effect unless it is published for a period of not less than 6 months. Now, so far we have covered the provisions of lease. You go through, still a lot of things are to be discussed because due to lack of time, or sometimes it is boring for you if 1 or 2 sections are taught in one session. Then sometimes you also feel bored because repetition sometimes of some sections will cause boring. But now we have covered up to section 117, that is lease. Now, section 118, that is exchange. What is exchange? You think for a moment, what is exchange? If one thing is exchange for another, then that is called exchange. It is as good as barter system. Barter, previously this barter system was there for goods with goods. That has been recognized in the section 118. What it says? Exchange has been defined when 2 persons mutually transfer the ownership of one thing for the ownership of another. 2 persons mutually transfer the ownership of one thing for the ownership of another, neither thing or both things being money only. The transaction is called an exchange. So one money, neither thing or both things being money only means what? Suppose one thing, the other thing is money, only money. So that will be ownership is transferred for money, that is a sale. When neither thing, one thing, suppose for one land, another piece of land and money. So that will also be exchange. Some money, only, neither thing, money only. Only money. One thing is thing and the other thing is money only. Then that will not be an exchange. That will be a sale. But that is mutual transfer. Two persons mutually transfer. Mutually, but section 54 of the transfer law defines what? Sale is a transfer of ownership of property for price paid or promised. So here, two persons mutually exchange, mutual transfer. Word exchange is not there. Mutually transfer the ownership of one thing for another thing. Neither thing or both things mean money. Suppose both the things are money, then that is exchange. Both the things are money, that is exchange. If one of the thing is money, other thing is a particular thing, then that will not be treated. That will not be an exchange. Neither thing and both things money. Both the things money, that is exchange. Mutually transfer the ownership one thing for the another thing, that is exchange. One thing, another thing and money, that will be an exchange. So a transfer of property in completion of an exchange can be made only in manner provided for the transfer of such property by sale. How an exchange will take place? In the same manner in which a sale takes place. 100 rupees and above needs compulsory registration. So in such case, transfer of property in completion of an exchange can be made only in manner provided for the transfer of such property by sale. So here, this is what is section 118. You should know what is the difference between sale and exchange. In case of sale, one thing is not never transferred in lieu of another thing. Only for money, for price paid, promised to be paid. But here, two or more persons mutually exchange one thing for the another thing, and neither thing. If one thing is money, then that will not be exchanged. Or if both the things are money, then that will be exchanged. In case of both things are money, so the genuineness of money is guaranteed. The genuineness of money. I suppose you go to a particular shop, you take 500 rupees and he says give an exchange. So if we give 100 rupees, that is an exchange. So two persons mutually transfer the ownership of one thing for another thing, and neither thing are being money only. One thing is not money only, or both the things being money only. So that is also be treated as exchange. So here, right of party depriving thing received in exchange if any. Suppose in exchange, suppose an exchange takes place. The one party got one thing, the other party did not get that thing, either in full or in part. In such case, the person who has taken that thing will compensate the other for the loss. If it is not possible, to return the thing to that person. What this section 119 says, if any party to an exchange or any person claiming through or under such party, either that party or any other person claiming through that party in exchange, is by reason of any defect in the title of the other party, because of defect in title of the thing of the other party, deprived of the thing, or any part of the thing received, either deprived of the entire thing or part of the thing received by him in exchange, then unless a contrary intention appears from the terms of the exchange, such a party is liable to him or any person claiming through under him for loss caused thereby. Then the person who is deprived of is entitled to claim, is liable, the other party will be liable to the person claiming that for the deprived, who is deprived, to make good the loss caused to thereby. Or at the option of the person so deprived, or even option of the person who deprived for the return of the thing transferred. If that person wants no, the thing be transferred. Then at the option of the person who should deprive for return of the thing transferred. If still in possession of such other party, if that thing is still in possession of such other party, or is legally deprived, or a transfer from him without consequence. If a third party has acquired title over that property in good faith for consideration, then in such case, the person who is deprived of that thing will not get the return of that thing. So this section 197. What it says? If any party to an exchange or a person claiming through under such party, if a party which is a party, one party in the exchange or any other person who claims through that party is deprived of to get that thing because of defect in title of the other party, then in such case that other party is liable to make good the loss which is sustained. If that person desires, if at the option, besides, other than that, at the option of the person who is so deprived, the other party is liable to return the thing which he has taken in exchange. If that property is still in his possession or is legally printed, but not from a transferee with consideration with good faith. This is section 119. 120. Rights and liabilities of the parties. So the similar rights and liability of seller and buyer will govern the rights and liability of the respective party. What it says? 120 provides, save as otherwise provided in this chapter. Each party has the rights and is subject to the liabilities of a seller as to that which he gives. If a person who gives, first he gives. In the exchange, one party will give first. So who he gives, he will be treated, he has the right and liabilities of a seller. He who takes, he has the right and liabilities of a buyer as to what he takes. So simultaneously property cannot be given. One will give first and the other party will take. So in such case, in case of exchange, he who gives, he will be treated as his rights and liabilities will be governed as the rights and liabilities of the seller. He who takes, his rights and liabilities are to be governed as per the provisions of the Terms of Property Act as a buyer. Exchange of money, suppose when money is exchanged for another money, that is a exchange. In such case, on an exchange of money, each party thereby warrants the genuineness of the money given by him. Suppose I went to a petrol pump and asked for the exchange of a 500 rupees. He took my 500 rupees. I give a guarantee that my 500 rupees which I am giving, and in lieu of for exchange I am taking 100 rupee note, that my 500 rupees genuine. Similarly, the person who is giving me this 100 rupee, that each party thereby warrants. He also warrants that the 100 rupee which he gives, that is genuine. We have covered in our next discussion, next class we will discuss the other provisions of the transfer product giving gift. Thank you all.